Hey, Siris here. Anyone who has ever tried to record HDR gameplay using OBS would know that it just doesn't work very well. Recordings can look dull, washed out, too bright, or overly saturated. Usually the only solutions to this problem found on the internet are to record using a capture card that supports tone mapping to SDR, tweaking colors in a video editor, or just to not use HDR at all. Well, not anymore. As I was researching solutions to the HDR problem, I came across a wiki page on the official OBS GitHub repo that details how HDR will work in OBS version 28. After reading through this wiki page, I decided to build OBS from source to see if these changes were integrated. To my surprise, my recordings now looked exactly how I wanted them to, and OBS is now tone mapping to SDR. So how can you get your hands on this version of OBS before it officially launches? If you've got experience with compiling other things, as well as around 20 gigabytes of free space for development tools, OBS makes it super easy to build it yourself, which is always going to be the safer option than trusting some random person's OBS files from the internet. If you feel like you could follow along, I will walk through the steps needed to compile and run your own version of OBS with these new features. If you don't think you could follow along, or you don't want to risk messing something up on your system, I, a random man from the internet, have placed a link in the description below of a version I compiled and uploaded myself. Note that this link will be removed once OBS version 28 goes public. Feel free to skip ahead here if you decide to not build OBS yourself. To build OBS from its source, navigate to OBS on GitHub and then to its wiki. Click on Windows beneath Build OBS from Source. Here are the list of things we will need to make sure we have installed before we can build OBS. PowerShell will already be installed on a majority of Windows 10 and 11 installs. We will also need Visual Studio 2019 with Windows 10 SDK and Git for Windows. You can download Git for Windows from git-scm.com or from gitforwindows.org. I skipped this step as I already had Git installed, however, it's pretty basic. Just use the suggested or default options from either installer. That should work fine. Next, navigate to Microsoft's older download section for Visual Studio. Note that I attempted using Visual Studio 2022 and ran into issues while building OBS, so only use the 2019 edition. Click the 2019 section and then click Download. A new tab will open. Select version 16.11 or 16.0 on the left and then click Download on Visual Studio Community 2019. Wait a few seconds and the installer will download. Open the installer and accept the prompt for admin privileges. Wait a few seconds again while the installer sets things up. Next, scroll down on the Workloads tab and select Desktop Development with C++. I tried getting away with only installing the Windows 10 SDK and not installing this workload, but I ran into issues while building OBS when I didn't select this. You may notice the required version of the Windows 10 SDK is not an option here. To fix that, select the Individual Components tab and then scroll all the way down. Select the proper SDK version, 10.0.20348.0, and deselect the version that was already selected. After that's done, click Install on the bottom left and wait. This can take quite some time depending on your internet speed. After the installer is finished, Visual Studio will automatically launch. Click the Not Now, Maybe Later button on this prompt. Then, click Start Visual Studio. Next, we will create a folder that we will use as our workspace for building OBS. You can put the folder anywhere, but I chose to put it on the root of my C drive with the name OBS. Now, let's go ahead and copy the source code to this folder. Open PowerShell as admin and change the current directory to the folder we just created. To do that, type the command cd/OBS and press enter. Copy this Git line here from the OBS build instructions page and paste it into the PowerShell window and hit enter. This step can take some time as well. Once it's finished, we will need to navigate to the checkout directory, which is located in OBS/OBS Studio/CI. Return to our PowerShell window and type the command cd OBS Studio/CI and press enter. Next, we will go ahead and start the build process. There are a few commands here. We'll be using the one that builds OBS and creates a zip file of OBS once it's done building. Copy the line that says build-windows.ps1-package on the build instructions page. Return to our PowerShell window, type // and paste that line we copied. Also press enter. This will begin installing and building OBS as well as its dependencies. Note that during this installation, you may be prompted to install some of these dependencies in different windows. Again, just select the default options and agree to any admin prompts along the way, and you should be fine. This step can be extremely time-consuming. I have a fairly high-end PC and gigabit Ethernet, and it took me around 12 minutes. Hopefully everything went well for you. We can now go ahead and extract the zip file and launch OBS. Navigate to OBS/OBS Studio and scroll down. You will see the zipped OBS file. Copy it to your desktop or wherever else and extract it. Navigate to bin/64-bit and double-click on obs64.exe. Congrats! You're now running a version of OBS that supports HDR. Keep in mind that this is an unreleased version of OBS, and as such, there may be bugs. You may run into scenarios where OBS will still record HDR the way it has before. For best results, I personally enable HDR inside of Windows and allow Windows to automatically make compatible games use HDR. Some games may have options for different versions of HDR. For me, HDR10 works a lot better than Dolby Vision here in Battlefield 1. Make sure whatever source you use in OBS has HDR enabled before you attempt to use it. For example, if you launch OBS to a window capture with HDR off, and then turn HDR on in Windows, OBS recordings will look bad again. The same goes for game capture. Make sure you have HDR enabled in a specific game before you try and use the game capture in OBS. There are many new color settings in the Advanced Options menu for OBS. These are the settings that look best for me. You may have to play around with these settings to get a picture that looks best for you. Changing the SDR white level down here seems to have the biggest effect of all these settings. If you previously integrated Twitch into OBS before, you may notice that all of the Twitch docs have disappeared. To get them back, we can't link our Twitch account like we did before. It's a limitation of building it from source yourself. So we'll have to manually add them. Go to Twitch and access the creator dashboard here. From there, click Stream Manager. You'll notice multiple panels in here. To import these into OBS, click the 3 little dots on a panel and click Pop Out. Copy the link from the pop-out and go back into OBS. Click Docs and then click Custom Browser Docs. Create a name for the doc on the left and paste in the URL on the right. Click Apply, and then you'll be able to use the panel. You can repeat this process over and over to add as many panels as needed. Note, you will have to log into Twitch inside of a panel to do any actions that would require a login. And that's the end of this video. If you have any questions or tips for others, feel free to share them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching.